my entire body was flooded with, I've never had an experience like it. I mean, I remember at the time thinking like, this is what people talk about when they feel like they have a calling. I just knew in that moment I'm meant to do this.
Hello and welcome to My Great Pivot, the podcast where we talk to female founders in all stages of the entrepreneurial journey. I'm Carrie Regan, and I'm obsessed with stories of entrepreneurs who risk it all to pursue their dreams. We talk a lot in the entrepreneurial world about being mission-driven, and for good reason. You need something deeper than profit to sustain you through the inevitable stretches of self-doubt, slow growth, and unglamorous logistics that come with building something from scratch. Mission helps. But a calling? A calling is something else entirely. A calling doesn't wait until the timing is right or the finances make sense. It just pulls. And when your entire business is built around a calling, it creates its own unique set of entrepreneurial challenges, especially when that business involves a topic that makes a lot of us somewhat uncomfortable: death. How do you put a price on work that's so personal and so very sacred, let alone promote it? It's just one of the challenges we discuss in my conversation this week with Carrie DeMartini, founder of the Wishing Well Center in Knoxville, Tennessee. I hope you enjoy our conversation. Carrie DeMartini, you are an end-of-life doula, coach, educator, and founder of the Wishing Well Center in Knoxville, Tennessee. Hello, and thank you for joining me today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It really is an honor to know that someone's interested in what I do. Yeah.
For the uninitiated, what is an end-of-life doula?
So most people know about a birth doula, which is a non-clinical presence who is very educated, informed, and trained in the case of a birth doula in the entire prenatal labor, delivery, and postpartum process. And so it's this multifaceted approach to care because while you are a educational informational resource and often a secondary sounding board and voice from the clinical realm to the world of home and family, you also are providing a lot of emotional support. And also you are the advocate for the client. So that is what you do at a birth. And the other threshold where doulas are now coming more and more into play is at the end of life threshold with death. And again, just an awareness that while death is often taking place in medical environments as a medical event, it's actually the inevitable end that we all physically experience, and that there's so much outside of the medical realm that is a part of death and dying. And that's my pull as a doula. So I work with clients with everything from just providing kind of like death 101, what actually happens when we die physiologically, and then also the mental, emotional, and spiritual journey that is inherent in that process when we're present and aware and conscious that it's happening to us, as well as making, I say, heart and soul centered end of life plans. So beyond estate planning and medical directives, both of which are very important, but are very linear and logical. Well, maybe not always logical. In this case of estate planning can get kind of crazy, but really what makes you feel physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually at ease in your everyday life, and how can we help to facilitate that same sense of ease and well-being as you face the end of life. And then, of course, I'm an advocate and ambassador between a client and their family or loved ones or even their medical team, just reminding everybody, here's what the plan was, and our job is to honor that. Then through that work, honestly, the other piece that I do a lot of is grief tending. There's so much grief inherent in that process. And having been at so many bedsides as a hospice volunteer, a lot of my doula work is about holding everybody in the room's grief and helping people be with that and just be with the emotions that arise and help provide a calm and soothing space for whatever shows up in that end of life and grief realm. Yeah.
It's such important work, and as you point out, it's something that touches us all.
Mhm.
Who are your typical clients? Is it a medical facility that has you on staff? Are they individuals? Are they families who have somebody who's going to be passing away?
Yeah.
Somebody? Yeah.
So currently, the people who I'm working with, a lot of them are the 65 plus generation. So people who are just realizing that barring a Guinness Book of World Records lifespan, that they are closer to the end of their life expectancy than at the beginning of the journey. And so feeling or knowing, having that sense that I should be holding this a little bit more in my daily life and how I'm living than I am now. So that's probably the largest percentage. So that's personal and it's often word of mouth referral. Most people are not going to be on Google unless they've read a New York Times article about a death doula or something. They're not going to be on Google searching for what I offer. They're going to be facing an end of life diagnosis, or maybe they're just exhausted on the treatment gauntlet and saying, I think it's time to stop, but I don't even know how to say that. And I don't know what it would look like. They don't know what they're looking for. And so I would love to start partnering more and be somebody that general physicians, family physicians, your nurse practitioners, or even massage therapists or acupuncturists, they're, mental health specialists who have clients coming into their office and they go, we know someone who can be the bridge for you as you're navigating this space. Also, my degree is in biology, and I've been writing for the healthcare field for a long time as a copywriter. And so I can just take in a lot of medical information and translate it back into real people language. And so I also have worked with clients in what I call healthcare and treatment advocacy, sitting down with them and really going over what they've heard from their doctors and their specialists about what the diagnosis and prognosis is, what the treatment options are, weighing the pros and cons of that. And again, that emotional component of just holding and companioning them with whatever's coming up around it and then saying, how do we facilitate a path forward that honors your values and what you view as a quality of life, rather than just saying yes to anything that's offered, not even really sure what you're chasing or what the outcome might look like. What does the end point mean? So it's interesting, like all the different facets that I work within and all the ways I could build more relationships with community members that can help send people my direction.
Yeah, there's so much that I want to unpack in that. First, as you mentioned, your job is so multifaceted. Knowing the correct language to use and how to communicate with medical professionals, being able to navigate the heavy psychology of somebody
Mhm.
going through the end of life and their family members who can sometimes be even more challenging. Um,
Absolutely.
Handling the emotional part of it. I know you are a certified educator, doula, and coach. How did you choose the right certification program? How did you research them and know which one would be right for you? And what did that certification program involve?
So the place where I got my end of life, first it was end of life coaching, which I have very mixed feelings about the word coach. People recognize what a coach does, but it also feels odd to me because I haven't died yet that I'm aware of. As far as I know, I'm still here in whatever this plane of existence is. And so, to me, a coach has an expertise in the thing in which they're guiding people to become better at something. But I get why the term was created, right? So I think educator works better. I went through a place called the Conscious Dying Institute. The woman, Taryn Estes, who founded that, she has since semi retired out of that. And so it's rebranded in a Conscious Dying Collective. I chose them intentionally for a few reasons. If you were to go online and seek end of life or death doula certifications, you're going to see a lot of them. But I was really interested in specific things. I wanted a program with longevity. I did not want a 6-week program. I did not want something that you could go for a weekend or 2 weekend retreat type things and be certified. I wanted something where I knew I was going to be getting high quality resourcing and that I was going to have the time to work through that and assimilate it and to be processing it. And so they had one of the longest programs available, and the price was the same, so it wasn't like I paid more. All of the pricing is more or less the same across the board, but this program was 6 months in its entirety, and there was space in between each one, and that to me gave the program credibility because it said, "We believe in quality, and we want people who are committed to the quality of that." The other thing that I really loved about them is that in addition to the practical and logistical aspects of learning about end of life and the doula certification instructional pieces, They have a lot of heart and spirit embedded. They do a lot of heart tending and a lot of teaching a lot of practices for working with people that I felt was lacking in some of the other programs. And it's interesting because since then, I'm now part of a death collective here in Knoxville. We're called the Appalachian Great Trees Death Collective. It just started last year. And I've met a few other women who've done doula credentials through different organizations that are well known, and they don't feel equipped and ready. And they're now investing in other programs. And the Conscious Dying Collective is one of them. Since I've received my certification, there's a program in Black Mountain, Asheville area, and it's the Center for Conscious Living and Dying. It operates like an Omega home where they can have three people who are dying. They call them their residents. It's a beautiful home. It's 100% free and it's staffed by this incredible team of volunteers. And it was co-founded by a woman named Aditi Sethi, who is a hospice doctor who went through the death doula certification program that I did, the Conscious Dying Institute. They now offer the combo of Zoom type classes, and then you get to do hands-on training to finalize your certification there. So now that's available too, which is amazing. And I've gone to several events and things that they have there. I call them my mother house because it's a place I can go and be with people who are aligned in the same realm of vocation. Yeah.
I love that you went through that process of researching the different certification programs and finding one that, as you say, was 6 months long. It really respected the process. For me, it sounds like it really respected what this work really entails in a way
Mhm.
that a quickie certification doesn't.
No.
But getting back to the very beginning, what inspired you to make this pivot to go from a
I know.
copywriter, yeah, a
Mhm.
biologist, I know you studied music as well, to making this switch?
Looking back, there were all these seeds that were in my like, going way back in my childhood even, but nothing at the time that ever made me think, "Oh, someday I really wanna work with people who are dying and their families, and I really wanna help educate communities about community end of life care and how to view death as a sacred rite of passage," but that was never a part of it. But I would say the biggest kernel of where this began is that around 13, 14 years ago, I was in a group, it was kind of like a book club of sorts, and a woman who hosted it was sharing a story about being asked to come and hold vigil for a good friend of hers who was dying. And while she was there, this group of women came in very quietly and unobtrusively, and they had these little chairs and stools, and the three of them sat down, and they were a volunteer group who had been a resource that the man who was dying, his hospice team had offered, and these women just sat down and they sang a cappella songs, just beautiful, soothing bedside songs. And my friend who had witnessed this was sharing this experience, how incredible it was. And I just, my entire body was flooded with, I've never had an experience like it. I mean, I remember at the time thinking, like, this is what people talk about when they feel like they have a calling. I just knew in that moment I was meant to join this organization and start singing at bedsides. And it's called the Threshold Choir. And it was a jarring experience for me because I've always been hospital phobic and medical phobic. I've always been extremely uncomfortable in medical settings. And so it was very odd to have this feeling of I'm meant to do this when the this is about something that I have had such a strong aversion to most of my life. But the feeling was strong. And so I just researched Threshold Choir. Just will fast forward to say that I ended up singing. And so Threshold Choir rehearses as a choir, the groups do. And you can, anyone interested can go to thresholdchoir.org and learn more about that. It's international now, but the majority are here in the United States. You don't have to be like a professional singer, just the ability to hold a pitch a cappella while singing with small groups. So, Threshold Choir also, integrity with a capital I. You don't join that group and then just go into a hospital or a hospice home and sing. You go to rehearsals for a long time. There are very strict parameters about what's required. And that includes not only just a certain knowledge of the songs, but also the emotional learning and work that is required because of all that is at a bedside. Also, the complex nature that can show up within family dynamics in those spaces, and you will be triggered at some point. And so you have to have a very specific awareness of what to do when that happens and how you are with the group if you have to actually check out. And so, again, tons of integrity before you ever are allowed to sing at a bedside. But through that experience, I ended up singing at bedsides for almost 8 straight years and then beyond, because on my own, I do it too. And through that, I realized, wow, I am to me, my fullest and best self when I am in service at somebody's deathbed or with their family or their loved ones and their caregivers who are in intense emotional pain around it. I have this ability to stay present, to not be shaken, almost to like just double down in my energy and just be with whatever shows up, and then to work with de escalating if it's a more intense situation. And so then I went into hospice volunteer work. So I thought I want to do more of this. And I wanted to also get a little more involved with direct patient care and grief support. So I became a hospice volunteer and I did that for many years. So collectively now I was singing at bedsides for Threshold Choir and I was volunteering for hospice, both direct patient care and grief support, and realized, wow, there's a huge gap. I mean, abyss between the clinical medical world and what's happening for human beings who leave that space and go home and are faced with whatever it is they're facing. And it doesn't have to be this way. And there needs to be a bridge. And that is really the beginning of saying, okay, I want to become a certified death doula. I want to have credentials that people can respect and acknowledge. I wanted more learning, but realistically, I know what people are looking for. We're very trained that like you have to have a certification and you have to have this degree and you have to have that in order to have credibility. So the death doula piece felt like that certification would not only give me more information and education and work of my own to do, but it would also be that thing that adds a little bit of legitimacy into this business I'm creating. I'm making it up in some ways. And I was having to apprentice myself, through these experiences. And that's how Wishing Well Center was born.
I love first how Threshold Choir was your stepping stone in
Mhm.
realizing this was
Absolutely.
really, something that you wanted to do. You in a lot of ways, you got to try it out. And were you still working full time while you were volunteering?
Yeah, so I have a teaching credential. So my degree is in biology, my minor is in music. I got a teaching credential, single subject to teach high school and junior high, and I took a test to be certified to be a language arts teacher as opposed to a science teacher, and then never taught in the classroom other than a lot of substitute teaching in my student teaching because then I got pregnant. So the copywriting was a way to become what I call a pretend stay-at-home mom. And it also was wonderful because I love to learn, and I've written for so many different industries, but it allowed me to just constantly research and get to learn. So it fulfilled that part of me and a need while allowing me to be at home and have a flexible schedule. But I'll be transparent, money is definitely one of my issues. I don't have much anxiety, but where it shows up for me is around money. Is there gonna be enough? Am I gonna make enough? What if I don't make enough? And copywriting is a freelance. You have to produce to make money. Threshold Choir was the beginning of a big lesson for me, which was when you step into what is calling you or what you are meant to be doing, there are ways in which you are provided for, and that is not to say, like, I haven't had that magical abundance a lot of people speak about.
Where's my abundance?
Yes, I know. I haven't had quite that thing that, like, people get really excited about and talk about. I haven't had that experience yet. Maybe I have more financial barriers to break through, I don't know. But I've always had enough, and it was amazing to me. I would get these bedside requests, and I knew what my writing schedule was and think, "I don't have time for this," and yet I just felt, "But I need to do it." And I would do the bedside requests, and somehow all of my articles, I still got them written. I still would get raises year after year from my regular writing clients, and it just was a beginning learning of you keep saying yes where you're feeling the call and everything else is going to work out. It's like very much a trust the process situation. And 10 years later, I still feel like that. There's always just enough. And so I keep courageously moving forward. Yeah.
I really feel that. And it is so hard to find a career where you feel constantly challenged and you're constantly learning. I think it's a blessing, this desire for constant knowledge, and yet a curse too, because you need, for me at least, I feel like it's so easy to get bored if you're not constantly getting that new and different coming.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of entrepreneurs feel this way. It's interesting because I would have never thought of myself as an entrepreneur. I mean, my family laughs all the time. My family is sort of shocked by this whole last 15 years of my life because number one, my mom, if you were to ask her, she'd say, the fact that my daughter was A, singing at death bedsides, and B, is now working as a death doula when she could barely even be in a hospital without hyperventilating. I mean, this is going into my 20s even. When I had to visit my grandfather after having open heart surgery, I just remember focusing on my breathing and walking with my eyes down on the hospital floor. I wanted to just have someone hold my hand and close my eyes and play the trust game till I'm at my grandpa's bedside because I didn't wanna look at anything, I didn't wanna see anything, it all felt like it was just closing in on me. So they can't believe that I do this kind of work, number 1. I also used to say, "I would never work for myself." I am a procrastinator, that's who I was as a student. I would wait till the I could not write a good paper unless it was the very last minute, and then I would bust it out, That's how it always was for me in school. So I could never work for myself. I need somebody like a boss to say, here's what time you need to be at work. Here's what time you leave, and we'll get you the paycheck. And yet all of that has completely shifted in these last 15 years. And also, I was raised with you go to college, you have a major, you get a job, you work that job because I was a woman in our family really supported stay-at-home moms. It was like you'll probably be home with your kids for a while, but then you can go to work and back to work and you'll retire from that job. And so it almost felt like there was something wrong or I wasn't doing things right when I would work somewhere for a little while and be okay and then get another job. But now I just know, no, that was the entrepreneur in me that didn't have a word for like, I have all these ideas and I have all this curiosity and I have all these different things I want to do. And we live in a time now where that's being ever more embraced and accepted. So I feel really fortunate about that.
Yeah. I love that you recognize that you were your fullest self. I love that expression, your
Yeah.
fullest
For
self
sure.
when you were in this environment, because I feel like there are a lot of women who are very entrepreneurial minded and maybe they have a lot of different ideas, but they don't know which one to pursue.
Mhm.
And so I love the idea of it feeling like your fullest self in that environment and that being an indication of the path that you should follow.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's been huge for me. When I think about singing at bedsides, if you would have told me then you're going to be a death doula and you're going to start a business and here's what that business is going to offer, I would have thought that sounds kind of insane. That sounds neat, but I don't think that's me. But two things are really poignant for me about the bedside singing in terms of my personal experience while doing it. The first is I've always been so drawn to the mystery and always just in awe of the cosmos and the universe and spirituality as a whole and all of that and all of the religion and specific things and then the wider just looking up at the stars and being amazed, right? That's always been a part of who I am. But nothing ever really stuck for me outside of being in nature, right? Nothing ever stuck to me in terms of being directly connected to what I would say is like divine or sacred or God or whatever the word is that works for people. But when I was singing at bedsides, I learned that okay, this is prayer for me.
Mm,
This is what people experience when they're meditating and they're giving the rules of what works for them. What I learned is when I am with another human being and I'm connecting to them and just attuning to the energy that's there and not letting my brain try to think or ask questions, just waiting for what comes up and then that song comes up and you don't question the why of it and you start the song and then you're locked in with these other people and you're just witnessing that process. I felt so alive and so at peace. And that to me became a form of prayer. And wow, did it transform my relationships with the people in my household and around me in the sense that when you're spending a lot of time with people who are dying, I remember one bedside particularly, I'd probably been, like, irritated at my husband or I was arguing with him the night before or something, and I remember singing to this woman, and her husband of 50 plus years was standing in the doorway with tears just flowing, and this other outside version of me was watching this scene going, what on earth are you even wasting time or energy being irritated about? Wow. I mean, it has allowed me to let so much go. And so I think there's this piece about what fulfills you and what makes you feel whole, and also what keeps you stepping into your best self, what keeps you growing as a human being to like, what's the next thing I can do to drop that which doesn't serve me, you know? And if you can align your work with things that do that for you, what a gift.
That is such a gift and something that I think a lot of people struggle with because the mind gets in the way. We're told constantly, well, this is a strength of mine, or this is where I have all
Mhm.
this experience. So this is where I should be working. Or as you say, you have the family expectations of you went and spent all this money getting a college education in this field. So
That's
this is
right.
what you should be doing. And it can take a lot to really turn away from that and pursue another path, no matter how much you may be driven. It can be tough to even recognize that that's your
Mhm.
path because you could be so distracted by what the mind is telling you.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
yeah. Now it's a calling, but it's also a business.
It is.
And you mentioned trying to market these services, trying to monetize these services. Is there a tension there, monetizing a calling? Is there any kind of, I don't know, ick factor for you, or how did you get over that ick factor? Because obviously, if you're not making money doing it and you can't pay your bills, you can't continue to do it.
Well, first off, I feel like this is a great moment to just really honor and give gratitude to the Knoxville Entrepreneur Center. And then, even more out of that, the Women in Entrepreneurship group. I go to the Women in Entrepreneur, we call it WIE meetings. I go to that, and sometimes the women who are presenting, money's not an issue for them at all. They came from corporate businesses, they had generous incomes, they had a nice savings account. Maybe their partner also makes good money. So, like, the money part isn't the issue. It was more the stepping out of the normal career track and doing it on their own, that was the hard part. But and a lot of them already had marketing backgrounds, or they have all these strengths that can help. For those of us entrepreneurs who have never had any desire to start a business or own a business, who never had a business degree or financial acumen or marketing experience, it's a whole other layer of what you're taking on if you don't have the money behind you to pay other people to do that. And so finding in your community who your allies are, whether it's the Small Business Association or development centers in your area or the Knoxville Entrepreneur Center here. I know Wishing Well Center wouldn't be what it is right now. Not that it wouldn't come to fruition, but I wouldn't be as confident. Even though I don't have all that I want yet, I know that the resources are there and I feel so supported and held by the women in that group. So that's helped. Monetizing, very challenging. Number 1, death doulas in themselves are just coming into being as a business. I mean, they've existed forever as mostly women companioning people at the end of their lives, but that was a different situation. You were often also the medicine woman, or you were the healer, or you were also the birth midwife. There was some kind of bartering thing happening if people didn't have the money to pay you. Well, we're not living in that society anymore. And so monetizing is hard. How do you put a value on your time? For me, I have sliding scale models. That feels better to me. I want to be as transparent as possible about money. That's one of my number one things. And I want people to understand that money is the currency of your life energy. So when you're working for money, you have made an agreement with whoever pays you that for this amount of time, my life energy that I'm giving you is worth this dollar amount. And that dollar amount varies tremendously depending on the job and how it's viewed, right? So on my sliding scale, I'm kind of operating in the same realm as a therapist or a mental health professional. So per hour, only I do 90-minute sessions because I need longer for the processes that I do with people when I'm doing one-on-one sessions. And then I let people know I have a supported rate, a standard rate, and then a generously paying it forward rate. So people have an idea of what
Mm.
feels right to them. I really don't want money to bar people's ability to at least have information and resources. So I do give a lot of time and energy away, I would say. I also just finished a group course called Live Like You're Dying, and I'm going to be doing another one in the spring. And that gives people the same 7-session work that you would do one-on-one with me, but for a way more affordable price because you're paying what you would pay a lawyer for a single estate planning session for a 7-session course. So the people who just finished that course seemed really content with it. It surprised me. Most of the people that signed up for that course paid the standard or the generously pay it forward rate. Nobody paid the supported rate. So that showed me that they felt the value that I was asking was right for the amount.
So you created this course, Live Like You're Dying,
Yeah.
and where you were able to offer these services that you would usually give to individuals.
Mhm.
You were able to give it at a reduced price because you had a larger group and you were doing it as a group.
Correct, and I actually prefer to do group work. I understand that the things that bring people to my door are usually very, very tender. It's either they've heard about my grief support services, and I have, several people who are seeing me for grief, things that are showing up for them or that are just being almost, like, debilitated by grief, and they're ready to figure out a way to process it, and then some people are doing more of the end of life planning, which is what the course Live Like You're Dying is, or they're doing the treatment advocacy, right? So those are the 3 main things people are coming to me for. In the Live Like You're Dying class, you're doing a 7-session course that by the time you're done, if you do your homework and do the work that you need, you will have a folder that if something were to happen unexpectedly to you, your spouse or partner or loved ones would be able to go to that folder and they would know almost exactly what you want physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally to feel safe, calm, and at ease. So they'd have very specific instructions around that. And they would also know what you want for your body afterwards. And it's all written, which is nice because there can't be the family dynamics of, well, she said this. Well, no, I heard her say that, which happens a lot, right? So, yeah, it's a lot more affordable if you do it in community. And I love community building. So I get that people step in individually because they feel really scared to be vulnerable with other people with these tender topics. But once you feel comfortable in the container that I create for the group, that's a whole different ballgame because now you're meeting the people who are comfortable or more comfortable talking about these things too. Some of them might end up becoming part of your end of life care community because you've gotten to know one another and you know what each other wants and friendships start. So I really love doing the group stuff. I honor the one on one, but I'm trying to just always create more and more ways to serve people in community that these are the people who live near you and around you and who are also maybe not like-minded, and hopefully not. That's the best if they're not like-minded, but that you can say, "Wow, but here we are in the same heart and soul space, and we can be together and communicate with one another in that way," you know?
And what a gift that death plan is that what you call it? The
Yeah,
result of
like,
this?
your end li yeah,
End of life
end of life
plan.
plan for
End of
sure.
life.
Heart and
That's a
soul
lot
plan.
less gruesome than death plan. This is my death plan. But your end of life plan, what a tremendous gift that is to give to your family so that, as you say, you can avoid that conflict among
Mhm.
people and so that people don't have those doubts. I remember when my mother was in the hospital in May and was passing, just them asking, "Oh, she's had a heart attack. Should we do what do they do? Should we do an exploratory
Mhm.
scope and find out what the blockage is?" And we're thinking, "We don't think she would want that." Fortunately, she was still conscious and we were able to ask her, and she said, "Oh, absolutely not. No, I don't
Mhm.
want this
Mhm.
additional." But there's this constant stress and feeling, are we shortchanging her? Are we not doing everything that she wants? And if she hadn't been conscious, I think I would still be feeling tremendous guilt around some of the decisions that we made because she was able to communicate with us what she wanted at the time. I
Yeah,
don't
I mean,
carry that. Yeah.
if you talk to clinicians who are in that work, those medical doctors and nurses, it's so tricky because the litigation world has changed so much that they often are forced to do things. They carry a tremendous amount of untapped grief because of the things that they've had to put their patients. I mean, that whole notion of do no harm, it really needs to be re-explored in this era that we're in because you couldn't do the kinds of harm that can be done now when physicians first started taking that Hippocratic oath, right? Now there is such an ambiguous world that exists because of technological advancement as to what's helping and what's harming. And when you make death the worst thing, then that in itself becomes this moral and ethical conundrum because this inevitability becomes the sin and the worst thing and the thing we're trying to avoid. And I feel like on my side, I witnessed so much harm being done for the sheer purpose of people not being able to just acknowledge death and then get to be present for death, you know? And
Yes.
yeah, so doctors, I feel for them because what a gift for them too when someone goes, she was very clear, or my dad said straight out, yes, he wants to live, but the reality is not in this way, or not if it requires this, or that if sudden cardiac arrest happens, he's okay with that being the end as opposed to all of the stuff we can do. When you know what you want and you outline that for people and have it written, it helps so many people, not even just your loved ones, even the people who are present in the healthcare arena, right?
Yeah, absolutely. They seemed shocked when there were certain things that I remember they were having trouble finding a vein for an IV, and they were giving her potassium and it couldn't go through. They couldn't give it to her orally. And so it was burning her arm. And we were saying, "Why are you giving that?" And they said, "Her values are a little low. She might need it for her heart." And we said, "Well, you told us her heart's only functioning at 15%. And,
Mhm.
what are we really trying to forestall here?" It's almost like at a certain point, the medical advances that we have allowed us to keep people in discomfort for a longer time, and
Yes.
is that the goal? Should that be the goal?
I mean, that subject is obviously so vast, and you'll have to stop me because I could wax poetic and unpoetic about that. But absolutely, when the body becomes viewed as a machine, the technological advancements are the other machines that can help keep the physical machine alive. There's a lot that gets lost, overlooked, and unaddressed in that model. And I am not saying that those things shouldn't happen because I've worked with clients who firmly say, as long as I can physically be sustained, you hook me up to anything and everything, and then, okay. I don't ever try to talk someone out of that's not my personal choice, but I respect everybody's choice. But there isn't even enough spaces right now to talk about that and really sit with what it means when these things are happening. When the body's clearly shutting down because somebody's dying, but you have the ability to use chemistry and biology and technology to keep it barely eking along, like, it's a tricky space we're in right now.
And to be working in that space, again, such a challenge, and what a gift that people like you are who can bring so much compassion and so
Oh,
much
thank you.
knowledge to that process. Do you remember when you finished your certification, when you came out, say, on LinkedIn, that you were switching your profession and you were saying, "I am a death doula and I am launching Wishing Well." That had to be a big vulnerable moment. How did your community react?
Well, it's funny because creating a LinkedIn profile is something that I keep having on my need to do list. So that's a whole other part of our conversation we can have that goes back to what you were asking about marketing and being a
Uh-huh.
business owner. That's a whole other subject. Well, what I would say is I don't think my career shift may have been as shocking as some have been to their family and friends, only because it had been so long incubating because of my threshold choir work and then because of hospice work. So people in my close circles had watched me doing this work. So I don't think they were as shocked about it. Like it wasn't mind blowing to them. And at the same time, everyone I know is so curious about it because it's hard because I don't mean to diminish any other profession, that's not where I'm coming from, but it is true that if I decided that I really wanted to sell real estate because it gets me out there in the world and I get to meet all these people and you're kind of problem solving and fixing, you see that profession, you can see why certain people are really suited for it. So the great news for that is that everyone knows what a real estate agent is. When you say you sell real estate, you may have a niche market that you can explain, but everyone knows, okay, what you do, number 1. And number 2, there's already some pathways carved out for you because there's real estate agencies that are hiring or that you can begin working through. The hardest part for me and what my friends and family are constantly fascinated by is how do you carve out something that doesn't really seem to exist? Or versions of it exist, but not how I am doing them. And so that's the part that I think is very lonely at times and very I mean, scary. It definitely feels scary a lot, and in that there's a lot of self-questioning of, "What am I doing?" I mean, not what am I doing, I feel very competent with the what I do, but what am I doing thinking that I can on my own do this business? Like, where's the place that I could go and just get a job and do this work and feel more secure and have the way carved out for me already? But the reality is I have yet to find anything like that. Maybe Center for Conscious Living and Dying, but I don't live in Black Mountain in Asheville, and I'm not gonna be moving there, and they would have to have the right opening, and there's just so few windows,
Yeah.
and so that's challenging, and I feel like that's where both the kind of shock and awe of the people who know me are, and then even for the public of even trying to explain, like, what it is that I do and how I do it.
So when you have those moments of doubt, how do you get past them?
Well, I will spend a lot of money, I mean, not a lot of money, a lot of time, which feels like a loss of money. So I guess that was the subconscious truth. I will spend a lot of time on job hunting websites. I'll go and I'll look for, like, hospice volunteer coordinator job or something where my gifts and my experience and my certification would lend itself to that job. And I go through the process of looking for a job, just thinking, oh, maybe I wasn't meant to do this work, trying to talk myself out of it. But then I just keep tuned into my body, my felt sense, and I'm very aware of where the seat of my intuition is in my
Mhm.
body is really a strong communicator for me, and it's right, like, around my solar plexus and kind of the bottom of the sternum. I get a lot of information about what's right for me and what isn't from that space.
Mm.
And unfortunately and fortunately, it just shrinks and shirks and has, like, alarm bells, like, that is not the way, and I've just learned that it's never wrong. It's
Mm.
always I can trust it, and I have learned that by not trusting it and watching how the ramifications of that unfold, and so that's the main thing. Because it is so easy to just wanna say, "I'm just gonna get a regular job." Like, "This was a great idea, I can just volunteer for hospice," but my gut's like, "Stick with it.
Yeah.
Stick with it." And then it does feel kind of miraculous or synchronous. I guess it's synchronous that around those peak times, there always seems to be something that happens that'll show me, nope, there is a need for this. Like maybe somebody who took my card months ago will end up emailing me and saying, okay, I think I'm finally ready. Or a
Mm.
client that came to me to do a grief session and came for one session and then I never heard from them again. And then all of a sudden they come back and they're seeing me almost every week for a while. Or I just had a woman that I met when she found out what I do. She has a business that seems totally unrelated, but a lot of women come through her business. And she said, I'm sitting there doing my job, and all I'm doing is hearing the stories that these women are carrying. And now I heard what you do, and I want to start something that we can do once a month at my work where it'll be my clientele that I'll be advertising and it could be open to the public. But I need you to come because this is the job that I do, and I need someone who does what you do to help. Those are my little yeses that keep me moving forward.
The yeses keep you buoyed. I
Yeah.
wanna get back to the Knoxville Entrepreneurship Center and the
Yeah.
women in entrepreneurship. Are there specific services and programs that you tapped into and utilized? Is it mostly the support group, or were you part of an accelerator with them? Did you go through any training
Yes.
courses?
Okay. So first I go to the meetings. They meet once a month, right? If I'm not at that meeting, it means that I'm out of town or sick. I'm committed to going to those because they're just so much more than meetings. Sometimes they're about networking, but
Mhm.
they always have a guest speaker, and that speaker is always talking about something, whether it's marketing or vision planning or goal setting or how to create your elevator pitch or whatever. I've learned something at every single one. And so even just
Mm.
going to those has been a study into itself. And then through that, I learned about what they called then the co-starters program. And that was a 12 session, super affordable course for people who are thinking about starting a business or who have a fledgling business. And that was huge because, again, it met every week. You were with this cohort of people. So you didn't feel so alone and you're hearing the same kinds of struggles just in different ways across different industries. And then again, the guest speakers were all local business owners. And so you're just constantly resourced by the people in your area. And I have used those resources. Like to set up my LLC and to do a general contract for client work, I hired one of the lawyers that I met through the Entrepreneur Center, right? They also have a mentorship program that is volunteers. And so I wrote what my needs are, and they sent me a list of 3 people that they think would be good mentors for where I'm needing support. And then there's just something about knowing that here are the people I can go to when I'm ready for this service, as opposed to now I have to do an online search for like who's the best social media marketer, who's the best website designer. I already know who those people are and they are lined up for when I'm ready to take the next level of investment.
That's
Yeah.
great. So really tapping those local resources and
Mhm.
becoming a part of this community, and then being able to give back by supporting these
For
other female
sure.
entrepreneurs or other entrepreneurs in your community as well.
Yeah, and, social media you mentioned, and I said, I know I need to do my profile because I don't have social media personally. And I'm not like totally against it. It just never felt right to me. I try to minimize the amount of time I'm on screens, especially because as a copywriter, I spend a lot of time looking at a screen. I say that I'm a skin to skin human. So so the social media world just never really appealed to me and I never got involved in it. And so now fast forward to trying to start a business in this era with no social media account. I will often feel like, oh, I need to do that. And the minute I start to look at starting it, ugh, that whole weight just comes over me, and I can't even imagine spending more time and energy on that. So I still haven't done that, which is again a humongous, I get it. I'm consciously choosing right now something that is not helping me when it comes to starting a new business that's community based. That said, so many people who come to me for end of life planning and grief talk about how much they want to get off their phones and how for all the support social media can be, they'll just have the long list of why it hasn't been good for them and how it's not serving them and how it's hindering them. It's an addiction, right? It becomes an addiction or a compulsion at the very least. And so that makes it harder for me to step into it as well because I feel like I would be leveraging a medium that I hear so many people just saying we want to go back to more face-to-face connection. So that's why I'm gonna try for this next year to just still build those referral bases to the best of my ability and rely on opportunities like this that help get the word out. Lunch and learns with whoever wants to have me come and speak. I'm happy to do that kind of thing. I feel like all I need is this critical mass of people who've met me and experienced what I do and the benefits of what they gleaned from it, and then I feel like that will build the following I need to just have enough because that's all I need. I'm not looking to become a multimillionaire by any means. I just want to have enough and I want to do work that I feel I'm called to do?
That is the dream of so many people. You don't need to be a millionaire. You just need to wake up every day with a sense of purpose and feel like
Mhm.
you are doing something to make this world better, to contribute to other people's happiness as well.
I joke that my goal is in 5 years to be invited by the Knoxville Entrepreneur Center to give talks on how you can grow your business without social media marketing.
I love that. Without feeding the beast. Well, and death is such a tricky topic. End of life issues, it's really a tricky one to come up with a marketing plan around, at
Mhm.
least on social media.
The statistics are showing that especially younger generations, they respond actually better now to more authentic, genuine, behind the scenes,
Mm,
real stuff. So that bodes well. But there is a lot about it that feels gimmicky, and I can't mix gimmicky with what I do. I
mm.
can't do anything that isn't me. I can't use any voice that isn't mine because at the end of the day, right now, there's one person who they're going to be interfacing with, and it's me. And so when you go to my website, what you see and what you read you will absolutely step into my office and go, "Yep, this is across the board who she is."
Mhm.
There's nothing there that isn't Carrie.
And like you say, this is a business that seems to lend itself more to those personal connections and building that broad network and getting that recommendation. For something like this, a recommendation from a health provider who I trust, a therapist who I trust counts for so much more than an ad that I see on social media.
Mhm,
That's
mhm.
not necessarily, I don't want to be finding this person who is going to have such a pivotal and meaningful role in my life on TikTok necessarily. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, and you have to feel safe with the person you're with,
Yeah.
And I hope that everyone would feel safe with me, but the reality is that, there's 7 well, now there's what, almost 8 billion people on the planet, and so there's just certain energies and certain personality types, even whatever you're seeing and feeling from a person, there's so much going on behind the scenes because of everything that led you to this moment to whether that person feels safe and trusting and I wanna step in or completely off-putting. I mean, for a while, I thought that I wasn't meant to do this work because I say I'm an outgoing introvert, but I'm animated, I'm dynamic, I have a loud voice. No one's ever asking me to like speak louder, in anywhere that I am. I I have a sense of humor, often kind of dark. And so I felt like even when I was singing in Threshold Choir or going to hospice volunteer things, there I would sit and it's like all of the quiet observers in the room because the bulk of people drawn to the kind of work I do are much more like quiet observer than I am. And so I thought, I don't think I can do this work because I'm too much. But the interesting thing is when it's required, like when I'm at a bedside, whole different part comes to the table, like, not a whole different part, but, all the parts come together and are in a circle together holding hands for the Carrie that you meet it when you're in crisis or you need that support, and I think some people appreciate the levity of not having to be somber and serious and quiet all the time. There's something really refreshing for a lot of people about coming somewhere where you could just say anything, and yep, sometimes we're even gonna make horrible jokes and laugh about it because humor that comes from a healthy place is a part of assimilating trauma, and it's a part of assimilating stories and painful experiences, so sometimes it can be used to deflect, and I'm aware when that's happening, but people sometimes misunderstand how it's just as important to help make the story normal and real and just, "Yep, this happened, and I have to accept that," right? Or, "It's happening." And we gotta move forward, and sometimes we're still gonna laugh, you know?
I'm so happy to hear you say that because my husband is often horrified by my family's grim, like, sometimes it's very dark sense of humor. So from now on, I'm just gonna play this clip for him when he's rolling his eyes and just saying, "Oh my
I know.
goodness, where are you people
Like,
from?"
a Coen Brothers script is very
Yeah.
often in my mind, not with clients, I don't mean it that way, but just, like, in the world, I'm like, I could see how this could be a great Saturday Night Live skit.
Yes. Well, and you bring up a good point, and I think that this is something especially that women are plagued by this self-doubt, and we'll turn and see the many reasons why we might not be qualified to do something or why we shouldn't be doing something, and I think that men tend to be more apt to see the many reasons why they should be doing something and
Mhm,
why they are
mhm.
supremely qualified to do something. How do you feel that being a woman has influenced you pursuing this particular business? Do you feel like it's a strength, or am I just grossly overgeneralizing?
If we look at the balance of any human, and this terminology, some people might roll their eyes, but I'm just going to say the divine masculine and the divine feminine, which is really just saying the balance of the healthiest of that energy, which we describe as masculine, and the healthiest of the energy, which we think of as feminine. You want those things to be married and together. And in what we've been taught as a societal whole in Western culture, particularly white Western culture, it's all been in the unhealthy masculine persona. So it hasn't been even the masculine divine. It's about power, it's about top down structures, even a term like stay the course, this idea that somebody can't have a change of opinion or can't have a change of heart. It's like, what is life and growth and learning without that? So I feel like the feminine has a lot more room to be in those dynamics without criticism from the outside. So I'm grateful to be a female doing this entrepreneurial journey because I feel like I'm already more innately in touch with that intuition, that softer side of waiting and listening and knowing like I don't have to just plow forward to look like I know what I'm doing. I actually need to take a moment and make sure that I feel confident about the next step and then take it. For men, I think the pressure's on. Like, we don't want a male leader apparently who has a lot of ability to reflect and take time and say, we need to think about this and we need to hear from a bunch of different people. So in business, we've gone too far in that direction. And I feel really grateful as a female entrepreneur. I think I get a little more leeway because what may be looked at as feminine just looks normal and it's just more kind of accepted. Oh, that's a woman's intuition. We even have a term around that, right? So, yeah.
It's such brilliant insight. I see that now in the media industry, the industry that I've been in for some 30 years now, where these male leaders have pursued these multi-billion-dollar mergers, and now they're being undone years later.
Mm.
If they had stopped and reflected and considered, and any one of those leaders had said, "Let's put a pause on this. Let's really figure out, is this the right course of action?" It would have been seen as a weakness, when really it can be quite a strength. And I love that you have related that to the divine feminine, the feminine side.
Yeah, and I mean, the other thing is the what is best for the whole, even if it means that I don't get as much or everything that I wanted, right? And that is something that a mother is inherently doing. A healthy maternal energy is doing that all the time. It's not complete self-sacrifice. That's not what I'm saying. But it's that I know what I wanna do, and I know what would serve me personally best in this moment, but I'm gonna take a little bit of, I call it, like, cosmic thinking. That's what we need a lot more of, is this cosmic perspective that you have to step up out of yourself, but then another few layers to really look at that whole picture and how it affects everyone in this circle, but then also that long view of how does this ripple out? In the end of life realm, I feel like if we don't get to be present at our own deaths, what are we teaching our children and our grandchildren about what
Mm,
death means or what approaching end of life means? We're just starting this weird, vicious cycle of death just means you call 911 and you keep your fingers crossed.
mm,
And then, like, the whole story happens somewhere else really fast and with no clarity. That's what death has become so often. Business is kind of the same way in its own
mhm.
way. You have to have the ability to rise up and look long, and that requires tremendous patience, which again is considered more of a feminine than masculine thing, and that's what I'm constantly learning in this work.
I love that
Yeah.
connection. You mentioned before that you were partnering with someone in the local community. I think it's the yoga studio where you partner with Nights of Grief and Poetry.
Mhm,
You've also partnered with someone to offer retreats
mhm.
around grief and end of life issues. With such a sensitive issue, one where your own reputation matters so much and your integrity matters so much, how do you screen potential partners? How do you know that somebody is the right person to partner with?
Yeah, it happens to be that the gentleman that I've collaborated, his name is Carl Bello, and he's a therapist here in Knoxville. And we were introduced to one another by a mutual acquaintance. And she said, I know this guy and he is a therapist, but his niche is grief work. And I feel like you two would appreciate one another and you might want to collaborate. And so we met for coffee to talk about work together within that grief realm. And we have a couple teachers and mentors in common. And so first we did a talk together. We did a 6-week class called Grief as a Spiritual Practice. And that was so that we could see how we work together. So we did that 6-week class and that went great. And then we knew we wanted to do weekend grief retreats. There's just a whole different way for people to get to go out of their everyday world and really be held in community, and it's very, I don't know. It's magical what happens in those places for people's grief processes. But we did a retreat at Wellbeing Retreat in Tazewell together, loved it, went back and did a second one. That one was successful. One of the attendees of that retreat was so inspired by what we did that he's bringing us to Houston. So Carl and I are going to Houston to lead a grief retreat weekend there. And then we have another one on the books in Tazewell at the Wellbeing Retreat Center that you can see on their website. So that's how I partnered with him. What I call Nights of Grief and Poetry. That's like one of my favorite things that I do. Poetry is something I always used to say I hated, but it just turned out that I wasn't really reading it well. And man, now it's like a cornerstone of my work because poetry is a language of the soul. It takes semantics, which are so complicated, and then it layers them with this whole other energy that's coming through. And there's something about when poetry is spoken well, and especially over the layer of music, like the right ambient environment in music, it hits people in a completely different way. Carl, he's an amazing guitarist. And so we started doing me reading certain poems over his guitar music at the retreats, and that's where Nights of Grief and Poetry were born because we loved it so much that we started doing it as an event. And then the Death Collaborative that I talked about, we try to do occasional community education events, and so that's introduced me to other people. So over time of getting to be with someone, you just get a feeling if you're on the same page. I mentioned that gal that I just came across. She owns a spa in the area, the Lost Lagoon, and she said, "I hear women's stories and I feel like there needs to be a way that we can create space for this that's not just going into the therapist office because
Mm,
I have I've had great therapists in my life and I have deep respect for therapy, but it's not the same when you open a door literally and close it and you come into a space with somebody where everything is confidential as it should be in that moment. And then you open the door and you leave again. It almost lends itself to a compartmentalization that isn't
mm.
serving the healing process for communities. And we need to heal as a community and as extended communities. And so that's why I love the community work and that's why I love collaborations. And so, you baby step in with someone, you do one thing and you get to know them and how do we work together? And you see what the response is and you feel what the response is. And then this is a go or that was a great idea, but it didn't work out so much. Yeah.
I love too that all of these collaborations and meeting these pivotal figures have given birth to additional services too that you offer. Can you talk a little bit about the grief retreat and what happens at the grief retreat?
So Francis Weller is a psychotherapist of multiple decades who wrote a book, The Wild Edge of Sorrow. And through his work as a psychotherapist, as he saw people coming through the doors, it was really clear to him that what we say as grief is so layered. And the only one that we do a good job, again, this is mostly Western culture I'm talking about when I say we, that we do a little bit of holding for is when people die, when loved ones die, and then pets. Everybody understands a lot of pet grief. But the reality is that people are grieving for so many more reasons than that, and they don't even understand what the grief is or where it's coming from. And so he started identifying what he calls the five gates of grief.
Mm,
And they're a beautiful way for people to see that you hold a lot of grief that may have nothing to do with somebody dying. It
mm.
could be the childhood that you never got to have. It can be ancestral grief, which now is getting a lot more attention. That's one of the gates. So there can be all these different ones. The reason I'm mentioning those is because the grief retreat honors one that's called That Which We Expected But Did Not Receive. And it's that as human beings, we may think we're evolved 21st century humans, but when we come out of the womb and are held by our primary caregiver, we are DNA wired the same way that our ancestors 100,000 years ago were wired. We expected to be born into a smaller community of people that we would probably spend our entire life in and that we would be very seen and held within that community so that even if our parents may not be the best parents in the world, we had this extended village of aunties and uncles and elders that were looking out for us and holding us. So the trauma of having the not ideal mom and or dad isn't as much to carry because you've been really held by this village, right? And then of course within that, you were living close to the earth, you were in seasonal cycles. You were given rituals and ceremonies that honored everything from loss and grief to the harvest and celebrations. And that all of those are something that human beings literally need because they're wired in us. And the whole thing is dissolved in the last 300 or so years. Like that entire structure is just dissolved. Well, that's a blink of an eye for a human being.
Mm,
And so these grief rituals, the weekends are for is to literally remember what we're supposed to have. So it's like this spontaneous village that arises. And
mm,
as facilitators, it's Carl and my job to create a container that is very safe for everyone and to really hold that with a very clear, invisible, but energetic boundary. And in that space, we do a lot of teaching about these five gates of grief and some illuminating of all of the things that you have stored in you that you're not even aware of necessarily, or that you haven't been able to express, or that you haven't had the community to mirror back to you. And then within that, there's poetry, music, movement, writing exercises, free time, of course, and some ritual practices to give people ideas of ways to have embodied ways to process and work with grief, even by themselves at home, but hopefully, with friends and family and starting to create their own rituals when they go back home. And then it all culminates in the final ritual at the end. Ritual can kind of sound scary, but just a ceremony of sorts. And then everyone goes home and they're so magnificent. It is one of the greatest honors of my life to be able to be in that space with people. So yeah, that's what those are. And they're happening all over. Francis Weller's site shows where they're happening. People come from many states. They travel far to come to them because when you need it, you know you need it. And when you follow that call, you're rewarded really with that experience. But my wish is that these are just little healing islands from which the waves of that spread into other communities, and that just helps to slowly touch one another and just continue to grow the fluidity and the fluency of grief speak and how to be with someone who's hurting without fixing it, without having the need to fix it. That's the biggest thing. We want to fix. Again, we've gotten that's masculine energy, right? And women have it too. Mothers, as I say that, it's not a man thing. It's a personality type, but it's a masculine energy of you bring me a problem, I solve it. You
Yeah.
bring me, I'll fight the world for you. I'll take it away from you. But actually, what people need in grief is to just let the feelings flow through and have a companion in that experience, and hopefully many companions. Yeah.
It sounds like a really incredibly powerful event of as a
Hmm.
facilitator and as a participant. And again,
Yeah,
what a
for sure.
gift that work is to be able to create that for somebody.
Yeah, it's pretty magnificent that people trust us enough to bring what they bring. And you're hearing a lot of just painful, sad, never should have happened stories, but the reality is that they do. And the pretending they never should have happened doesn't do anyone any good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like I could talk to you all day. I've really imposed on your time, but I do wanna ask one final question,
Yeah.
and that's well, 2 final questions first. One is for the women out there who feel moved to take on a professional pivot. They have an idea where they can really bring their full self and they wanna pivot, but they're also feeling the responsibilities of being a mother and having to contribute to the household. What advice would you give women in that situation? In terms of being able to continue to fulfill those roles as a mother, as a provider, as a spouse, as well as pursuing their full self, pursuing a profession where they can bring their full self.
Yeah. I mean, I really do feel like the number one requirement in that scenario that you're speaking of, where it's not just such a big yes that that woman is just like on fire and bink goes, because those stories are out there too. But if you don't already have that discernment or intuition, that intuitive muscle or the ability to discern and really know, not from a should or what other people say or the brain getting too involved, do practices like breathing, yoga, therapy, or any work that will benefit you to really befriend that piece, because you're going to rely on that piece to inform your decisions more than you think. I honestly feel like that skill set is one of the most valuable. And in that piece, patience is easier to come by, because when you can learn to trust your true inner voice, and that for some people, what I say is inner voice could also be to them like an outer voice because they might feel like it's God or spirit or whatever leading them. Patience is going to be required, particularly if you feel like your primary calling is a mother. And that is absolutely a part of my story, and I feel like wishing well would be, I know 100% my business would already be in a more forward place if it weren't for the fact that I continuously have to remember that my first and primary calling is being a mom to our children while they were in our home, and it can be frustrating. I mean, it is sometimes really hard because there's this part of me that feels like a horse that's being held back at the starting gate,
Mhm.
and yet the reality is I really want to do a good job being a mom to my daughter. And so my first emotional availability is to her. and then our household, and the second is to wishing well. And so wishing well has to keep coming second. And for the part of me that's just the me wanting to be wishing well, that's excruciating at times. So that discernment piece and the intuitive voice piece is so important because it is what fortifies the patience that can be so hard to come by. So that's
Yes.
sort of like more in that loosey-goosey realm or like woo-woo realm. And then on the practical part, I say look local first because especially if you're in this area, but there are probably entrepreneur centers or small business development. Your local colleges, I mean, junior colleges and universities often have resources that are available to the community that the community doesn't know about. I think about UT, for example, here in Knoxville has a legal center and a marketing center that their interns would love to be paid a modest amount, but they need to do the hours and they'll do things for free as well. So just really starting to learn and get familiar and network with who's in your community and start building that resourcing first. Yeah, that would be my advice.
Such great advice from developing that intuition so that you can find that balance between your
Mhm.
personal and entrepreneurial sides.
Or
And then
cling to it with more confidence.
yes, yes. And tapping those local resources, the idea of those entrepreneurial centers within universities, I think that's brilliant too.
Mhm.
And finally, you've hinted at this. What's next for the Wishing Well Center?
I think the biggest thing for me is I'm looking for allies and partnerships, physicians, nurse practitioners, healthcare clinics, therapy centers. I really want to strengthen the referral base. That's the number one thing. And then the second thing is I just love creating new workshops and programs and courses. And so I've got several ideas. I continue to look for ways that I can connect with people who may have a job that doesn't seem to have anything in common necessarily. Like that spa, you wouldn't think that's necessarily has anything in common with end of life and grief. And yet we will be able to put something together where women can come and feel really nourished and held and like they were able to hopefully come to some awareness and gain some tools for learning to carry that which never completely goes away, which is our life experience and grief. There's nothing that fixes it or gets rid of it. It's how we learn to carry it and how we learn to meet it when it comes up. So there's so many businesses that align with that. So I'm always open to collaborations and we'll be continuing to build those.
That's great. Have you ever done anything around pet grief? Because that seems like a big market.
Yeah, so I want to for sure. I've had multiple dogs throughout my life, and one of them, Hank, we had to euthanize him not very long before we moved here to Knoxville. And I think about that because I have a husband who I love and who's a great partner, and I have a daughter who's wonderful, and we have this whole built-in support network for carrying that grief. But I think about all of the people whose pets die where that was their primary companion, or that can be the only person, I'll say person because that's what it felt like, the only living thing that really understood them or loved them. So I absolutely agree there's a huge need for that that goes largely unmet.
I imagine that can trigger so much from unresolved grief about human loved ones.
Yes, what I say is like to me, grief feels like a string of pearls, right? Like that keeps coiling up in our body. Like the first one is probably coming into this world from our mother's womb. Even if we met loving arms, still we lost the only space we knew, the only nourishment we knew, and bink, you're out of that. There's pearl number one. And then that changes coils up. When a fresh grief happens, like the death of a pet or euthanizing a pet or whatever, it might be the one that seems to be the brightest at that moment, but it activates all of the pearls along that strand. And so, so often when people come to me to talk about the grief that brings them to the office or to the retreat or whatever, what actually ends up happening is it turns out that might have been the means, but the deepest, the ones that need to be heard the most, were something they may have not even consciously thought of in a long time or that they didn't realize were as significant as they were. That's very, very common in the grief experience, in grief witnessing. Yeah.
Wow. How can people find out more about you, your work, and Wishing Well Center?
Just go to wishingwellcenter.com and look at my website because I love my website and I feel like it is a way to meet me. And then depending on what services they're interested in, they can always email me, Carrie@wishingwellcenter.com, or they can use the contact link through the website and we can start a conversation and see if it's a good fit. I want to make sure that everyone who comes through this door is met with an eye to eye welcome and hello and feels tended to. Yeah.
I have to think it's the only way you could do business after just knowing you through this brief conversation. Carrie DeMartini, thank you once again for sharing so much of your story and your work and your entrepreneurial journey with me today.
Thanks so much for having me, truly.
Thanks again to Carrie DeMartini for sharing her story and for the quiet courage it takes to build a business and provide such critically needed services around such a sensitive topic. To learn more about Carrie's work, visit wishingwellcenter.com. Her events page is currently being updated, but Carrie wanted me to share details about 2 upcoming grief retreats she's co-facilitating. The first is being held in East Tennessee and Tazewell at the Wellbeing Retreat Center, July 16th through the 19th. The second is at a beautiful retreat in Cleveland, Texas next February. If either calls to you, reach out to Carrie directly through wishingwellcenter.com. If you enjoyed this podcast, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you'd like to share your own entrepreneurial journey, we'd love to hear from you at thefemalefoundersproject.com. Thanks for listening and keep innovating.